Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Amira Afika binti Yaakob, metric number 1812298. Today, I'll be presenting my research on social media as one of the motivation factor among youth to travel to Langkawi Island during pandemic COVID-19. Before we go further, this is overview of my presentation for today, starting with introduction, literature review, methodology, data analysis and finding, and lastly, conclusion and recommendation. So now moving on to the chapter 1, which is introduction. For background of study, tourism is the biggest contributor to Malaysia's GDP after manufacturing and commodities. In recent years, the tourism industry in Malaysia was keen to capitalize on this trend. However, the outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020 has led to plummeted point of tourist arrival. So social media have a direct impact on travel choices. The roles of social media are labeled guided and approver. User purposefully use social media to explore and get information before or during the trip, and therefore social media are given the role of guide, stated by Liu et al. In 2019. So this is the tourist arrival in Malaysia. As we can see that the tourist arrival number is increasing every year. However, in 2020, the number is dropped drastically, with only 4.4 million tourist arrival in Malaysia in 2020. And for the tourist arrival in Langkawi also affected due to the pandemic COVID-19, as we can see that the number of tourist arrival dropped drastically in March in 2020. Thus, the problem statement for the research are the influence of COVID-19 in Malaysia has constrained the Visit Malaysia 2020 campaign, as 64% of tourists in Malaysia came from China, Singapore and Indonesia, which are badly affected by the pandemic COVID-19. The second one is some studies have shown that social connection via social media can be an important and powerful aspect of such errands in the tourism industry, stated by Fardous in 2017. So, however, the tourism must learn about its potential customer needs as well as their behavior and how they make purchasing decision, stated by Sahin and Sengun in 2015. Thus, I come out with three research questions, which are: what is the main score of the role of social media to travel among youths during pandemic COVID-19? And the second one is: what is the main score of consent to travel among youths during pandemic COVID-19? And the third one is: what is the relationship between the role of social media and motivation to travel among youth during pandemic COVID-19? And the three research objectives are: the first one is to measure the mean score of the role of social media to travel among youth during pandemic COVID-19. The second one is to measure the mean score of consent to travel among youth during pandemic COVID-19. And the last one is to investigate the relationship between the role of social media and motivation travel among youth during pandemic COVID-19. The scope of this study focused on the role of social media towards the level of factors affecting the motivation of youth to travel to Langkawi Island during pandemic COVID-19. Significance of study, there are two. The first one is for tourism industry. This study will improve the condition of the tourism in order to boost domestic tourism, especially in this pandemic COVID-19. The second one is academician. So this study, the analysis can be the references for future researchers. Now we moving on to the chapter 2, which is literature review. So the first one is social media. So the definition of social media is a 21st century concept that refers to various technologies or organized devices that use the social elements of the internet as a means of contact, involvement and creative expression, stated by Hamid in 2015. So for the pandemic COVID-19, it is a coronavirus disease. COVID-19 is an infection disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus. This is stated by World Health Organization, WHO, 2020. And the last one is travel motivation. So it is the ordinary person may travel for a variety of reasons, including leisure tourism, visiting friends and family, business tourism, educational tourism, sport tourism, wellness and health tourism, cultural tourism and many others, said by Walker in 2009. Now we're moving on to the chapter 3, which is methodology. So the instrument that I use in this research is by questionnaire, and the research approach is quantitative. So the target respondents are among youth in Malaysia, where the population is 15,100,000 and 1,000. So the sample size is supposedly 271 respondents, and I managed to get 200 respondents. So the sampling method I use is by convenience samples. Questionnaire, it consists of 4 sections. The first one is section A, is about social demographic, that consists of 9 questions. Section B is about role of social media, consists of 8 questions adapted from Guru Raja in 2015. Section C is about pandemic COVID-19, that consists of 6 questions that adapted from Abdullah, Dias and Mulay in 2020. And lastly, section D is about motivation to travel, that consists of 3 questions and adapted from Aziz and not determined, when in 2018, he and Luo in 2020. So for reliability analysis, the acceptable alpha value is 0.6 and above, said by Said in 2018. So for the role of social media, the Chrombat alpha is 0.841, while for pandemic COVID-19 is 0.874, which means these two variables have high Chrombat alpha value. Moving on to the chapter 4, which is data analysis and findings. So for the social demographic, the first one is gender. So the majority of respondents are among female, which is 89.5%, and for male only 10.5%. Marital status, most of them are single, which is 98.5%, and only 1.5% are married. For age group, the majority of them among 21 to 25 years old, which 58%, and the least one is among 26 to 30 years old, which only 4%. Education, majority of the respondents have bachelor degree, which representative 70.5%, and only 1% have PhD. Question is, do you use social media to search for places you intend to visit? And 99.9% answered yes, and only 0.5% answered no. Question is, which social media platform do you use most? For this, respondent majority use Instagram, which 29%, and only 3% use WhatsApp. How many times did you visit Langkawi Island since 2020? This to study their experience visiting Langkawi Island since pandemic COVID-19. So most of them answered never, which 58%, and more than 3 times is the least one, which is 5.5%. There are 2 open-ended questions. The first one is to study on the time spent on social media, where majority of the respondents answered they spend on social media more than 5 hours daily. And the second question is about the prefer to travel to Langkawi Island after MCO. So majority answered yes and willing to spend the time in Langkawi Island. However, some of them answered probably one, but depends on the condition and situation in Langkawi Island. And only a few answered no because of the limitation of time and money. Descriptive analysis. Among the 200 respondents who answered the questionnaire survey, they used social media to search for where to go for holiday was the highest mean for role of social media, with the mean score is 5.6, followed by use social media to explore activities in a given holiday destination with mean score 4.43. And next, respondents use social media to narrow choice of destination have slightly different, with use social media to seek advice on accommodation with mean score 5.34 and 5.33 respectively. So these are among the reasons why respondents use social media before or during traveling. So thus it clearly shows the role of social media itself. Meanwhile, the lowest mean score for the role of social media is to provide evaluation and reviews about accommodation were voted slightly agree, with the mean score is only 4.84, Hence, it can be said that most of the key factors have positive impact on social media in influencing tourists, and all role of social media indicates a high standard deviation value, which is 0.751 to 1.329. The highest mean value for main concern during travelling in pandemic COVID-19 is passenger wearing face mask during pandemic COVID-19, which is 5.70, and followed by cleanliness during pandemic COVID-19, which is 5.66. These two are the top priority that respondents considered during travelling in this pandemic situation. Last but not least, the lowest mean value for pandemic COVID-19 is comfort during pandemic COVID-19, which is 5.33. Wilson correlation, the finding from the analysis of the relationship between the role of social media and motivation to travel to Langkawi Island during pandemic COVID-19 showed that coefficients are statistically no significant to 0.030 level of significance. It can be highlighted that the role of social media have a weak relationship with pandemic COVID-19 with NR value of 0.031. To have a strong relationship, the R value must be 0.6 and above. Now we're moving on to the last chapter, which is chapter 5, conclusion and recommendation. So to answer all the research question, the first one is what is the mean score of the role of social media to travel among youths during pandemic COVID-19? So the average mean score for this research question is 5.21, and the second research question is what is the mean score of concern to travel among youth during pandemic COVID-19? So the average mean score is 5.58. And the last research question is what is the relationship between the role of social media and motivation to travel among youths during pandemic COVID-19? And it showed that there's no significant or weak relationship between these two variables. So to conclude, there are limitations during this research. The first one is limitation of time, where I only have 3 to 4 months to finish this research, and also limited number of respondents. So if I have more than 200 respondents, it can be more significant for the findings. And for recommendation, it can be conduct the research by interview to have more detailed answer by the respondent, and future research can widen the respondent, not just focus on youth, but also can focus on others target respondent and be more widened. I think that's all from me. Thank you.